So we've done community. Now I want to do the commons. The commons, or the public, is what McGowan calls it in his book, right? But the commons is spaces in which you encounter people who have different beliefs and values to yourself, where there is no set of beliefs or practices or shared enemy that is required in order to be in that space. So the commons are things like a library, a park, a Greyhound bus, right? Whatever it is, where is it? And shops, shopping centres to some extent, right? And we'll come back to this because public spaces or the commons are increasingly becoming privatised, right? So I might say a shopping centre, but shopping centres might increasingly become like gated communities that keep certain people out, right? But traditionally, there are these spaces of commons where you brush up against people who are not necessarily like you, who really are other. And they're allowed to be there. And they might annoy you and you might annoy them, but you interact, right? And in the commons, real possibilities can happen, as I say, for you to meet someone who is so unlike you. Like in the C.S. Lewis example, we're coming to the second form of friendship, where you disagree in so many things, and yet somehow you're not fed by the other, but rather you're fed by the lack in the other, right? There's something about the mystery of the other and the difference of the other and the otherness of the other that sustains you. You're sustained not by them being like you, the same, that you can kind of like selfishly kind of build your own identity up in relation to them, but their weird otherness actually chips away at your identity, right? So they don't feed your identity and strengthen it, they weaken it, right? Because when you encounter the other, at first you see them as strange and maybe even monstrous, right? In terms of what they think about work and life and love. But then you start to see yourself through their eyes and you realize I'm strange and maybe monstrous, not just to them, but to myself. Oh, my political views, the way I inhabit the world and I think about things is strange and weird and bizarre. But I can only start to experience my alienation through the eyes of the other. Right? Now, today we are experiencing, as I'm sure you've noticed, the erosion of the commons, right? People are more and more embracing community and trying to avoid communion, or sorry, I haven't got to communion, sorry. I'm trying to avoid the commons. Even spaces that are kind of like a commons become gated and private. So you might have something like Soho House, which is like the commons, right? Except that it's gated. You have to have a certain amount of money. You have to be recommended by certain people. You have to have a certain level of cool or financial success or symbolic status. So they kind of feed off the commons because the idea is, oh, I can just go and hang out and work there and meet people who are different. But really, it's a form of commons that excludes people. And we seem to say have less and less space where we have a commons and we have more and more private gated communities, all communities being gated. And this part of the problem is this is what we want, right? We like that. We don't want to get on a Greyhound bus sometimes. We don't want to rub shoulders with people who might be different from us and might have issues, right, that will kind of disturb us. So we protect ourselves. Now, I think that we have to learn to enjoy those spaces, right? And so, okay, this is where I come to communion.